From now, as you're answering the questions, I'd like you to add the lens on of collaboration with classroom teachers, whether it be elementary generalists or specialists in middle school or in terms of high school disciplinary focused teachers. So when you think about supporting ELLs, what are some of the challenges, and perhaps in particular, Leanne, because you're a homeroom teacher, as we sometimes call it, you could talk a little bit about the socio-emotional needs in particular?
Sure. Okay, where was I going to go with this one? I'm trying to remember so many ways. So I think that, let me just look at my notes. So I guess one thing that I didn't say is that I'm an immigrant myself. I was born in South Africa and I immigrated to Canada when I was 15. And I can honestly say that immigration is probably one of the most stressful, no, it is the most stressful experience that a family will go through. And I was an immigrant, I spoke English, so think about like a refugee experience and not being able to speak English, it's even way more stressful. So as a teacher, you have a role to, you have an important position where you can provide emotional support to families. And I think that's really important to meet with families, to hear some of their stories. You don't have to grill them with questions, but try to find out where they're at, what kind of stresses they're going through, what kind of supports you can offer. Because as an ESL teacher, you're not just delivering curriculum, you're also trying to support them, trying to support your students and their parents in an emotional way. So I highly recommend meeting with parents, asking them if there are any kind of services you can connect them with. Do they need clothes? Do they need food? Do they need to meet with a settlement worker? Can you set them up with a settlement worker in the school? So yeah,
you said as an ESL teacher, but you're a classroom teacher.
That I say ESL, I mean as a classroom.
As a classroom teacher. Okay.
Yeah, and with a classroom teacher with the hat on as an ESL teacher, because you are both really. If there's, I'll just tell you what's happening in our school. For grade 1 and grade 2, we don't deliver a regular ESL program to the primary students. Well, grade 3 is ESL, right? Ryan. And Ryan and I, obviously, we teach in the same school. So Ryan might see my grade 2 students once a week. And grade 1, do you see any grade 1 students? No. So you are it. You are both classroom teacher and ESL teacher in the primary division. Or at least that's what's happening in the Toronto District School Board. It might be different in other boards.
Is that just for the younger grades then, for like primary, or does it also continue into junior intermediate?
No, the way West Prep decided that, well, okay, West Prep is given 1.0 ESL. The vice principal is half-time. This is the reality, okay? The vice principal is half-time. That 0.5 ESL is used to make her position full. So Ryan is teaching 0.5 ESL, the other 0.5. So that 0.5 is given to junior students where the need is greatest, where the gap is widest between where they're at, where they need to be.
Do you mean funding, like 0.5% funding?
Yeah, so like every year you generate a certain number of positions in the school, and so like our school will generate 1.0 ESL, but it's not a protected position, so it can be creatively used in the school, and I think that the other teachers will also explain that that's the case in their school as well.
Yeah, and I think that's the reality in elementary school, which is different from high school, where you're like the ESL teacher, you have your own class, and it's so So whatever school board you end up in, I think every school is different if they prioritize ESL, and if the administration sees it as important. You're going to get varying levels of support, maybe none. That's quite the reality from an actual ESL teacher. I think that can happen at any grade level. It depends on the school. I mean, some schools have lots of support for the grade 1 and 2, whereas others don't have any. And this year, for example, my position I've combined with guidance. And so a lot of schools will do that because there's very little allocation at all for guidance. And so they'll give the guidance teacher ESL, and then you barely see the ESL kids. But I think because I've been doing ESL for 10 years and it's kind of a big part of my identity, I make sure I do, but there's a lot of pressure on me not to and to do other things for the school. But, so the reality is for you as a classroom teacher, you have to be prepared for that from an ESL teacher. And so one of the things I find is like time is so precious, as you know, as a teacher. So finding time to collaborate with the teacher, like, is a challenge, but it's really important. And that collaboration time, you know, it's really important that you as a classroom teacher come to it with a mindset that ESL students are important, because you have a lot of pressures on you, a lot of different voices, a lot of things happening in your classroom. So that's why I think that taking this course is really important, and really understanding some of the pedagogy behind supporting ELLs, because they can often get forgotten and not prioritized when you have, you know, 5 students on IEP special education, and you have all these other things to think about, and then you have 2 or 3 English language learners. You know, it's hard. So I think the big thing, you know, if you can prioritize them and try to think about them and think about this pedagogy, and, you know, I try to put things in place for teachers that are quick and easy. So that book that Mira showed you earlier of the grade 3 to 5 math strategies, we have that one in the school as well as 6, 7, and 8. And in it they have like sentence starters, so we're talking about sentence starters this morning. So I just like went through it and I found all the sentence starters and created a Word document. Like, this is the strand, these are the sentence starters. Like, give it to the teachers and you can just go copy and paste. You know, so quick and easy, but like, you know, at least thinking about having some of those strategies in place for your students. Quite honestly, one of the biggest challenges for me is like if a teacher has a mindset towards really caring about supporting the English language learners and not thinking about them as remedial students, but as students who have rich resources to come into the classroom. And I think, like, I see such a difference between the classroom teachers I work with who have that perspective and how they treat the kids and how the students view themselves as English language learners. I know a lot of my students coming in grade 6 from grade 5, they have a support model in our K-5 schools where they have the special ed and ESL programs combined. So they have a remedial deficit model thinking towards the English language learners, and you really see that when they come into grade 6. They all think that ESL means that they are not intelligent, and they express that constantly. So doing a lot of work around identity and how it's really important to, how their first languages are really rich assets, and voicing that as classroom teachers, and our grade 6 teachers are really good at that, and we do a lot of work, you know, especially in those first couple of months around those type of things, just to get them to reframe. We don't even use the word ESL because it's just been, we talk about, you know, you're bilingual, you know, that's great, like, so we get the kids all excited. Like, if you walk in a room and say, who's ESL? No one will raise their hand. But if you go in and you talk about how great it is to speak lots of different languages, then you're like, okay, who speaks another language? The whole class raises their hand, right? So I think those type of, you know, how you frame things and work with your kids is really important. And that's the biggest challenge for me. If a teacher doesn't have that mindset, it's really difficult to work with them and to support those students.
I'm actually going to echo quite a few things that you said. So one of them is calling the students what you name them. It's really important, especially when they're teenagers. They don't want to be labeled ESL. And often they're isolated from the other students because they're in the ESL classroom, they go to the ESL assemblies, they have an ESL everything. And so that's a challenge. It's like telling them, no, you're just a multilingual person. You need a little bit of extra English help. and you have to reorient the way they think about that class and that they should want to be there. That's a huge challenge, and also getting the other teachers to buy into the fact that these kids are just coming with extra knowledge, extra languages. It's not a deficit model, but there is an issue because in high school everything is streamed, right, like academic applied, but ESL is not streamed, it's academic, it just is. So of course not everyone, like you know that there's like speaking in the curriculum, right, writing, there's so many different aspects. So when you assess someone, like when I come to an elementary school and I assess the student in grade 8 and I say, okay, next year they're either going to be in ESL A, B, C, D, or E, I'm assessing like a test that they took on one day in July for 5 minutes, and I'm sort of seeing where they're going to fit, but they might not really totally fit in that classroom. And they might even have some special ed needs. And in high school you can't test someone for special ed for 3 years, I think it is, 2 or 3 years. So someone might have a legitimate thing that they need help with. Otherwise they can't, let's say it's a dyslexia, like they can't read the things I'm giving them. But I can't also test them for something that they might need help with. And they didn't get that help in their former country, or their parents don't divulge the information to us. So that's a really, really big challenge. And then I go and try and liaison with the special education teacher, or the principal, or their classroom teacher, or their parents. But another challenge is often the parents have, like they don't speak English, or they maybe don't have the cultural capital, like they don't feel comfortable advocating for their child. So that's another issue. But we try to get translators, but sometimes it's like you're translating a language, right, when you're a translator. But that might not really be the emotional, that the parent may not be really saying what they need to say or what they feel. So then sometimes I try and get a relative to come in, and that's kind of hard to schedule. And there's just, like it's not impossible, it's just challenging to do. So the advocacy piece, like you really have to be an advocate with the guidance counselor. You have to tell them about the OSSLT, the literacy test in grade 10. The students need to know that, their parents need to know that, and all the volunteer hours. Like they don't come to Canada knowing all the expectations of high school, but there isn't a class where they get taught those things. So you have to take your language class and make it into a class of teaching cultural and societal and educational norms in Ontario. So I find all those things to be like a constant conflict.
Ryan, over to you.
Are we still on the socio-emotional challenges?
So my lens was, I want, when you're answering any questions, to always think about the collaboration with classroom teachers. And this question was really about challenges, and that could certainly include the socio-emotional needs of students.
Okay. Okay, so yes, and again, echoing what other people have said, collaborating with the classroom teacher is obviously very important. I'm lucky at this school because the classroom teachers are amazing and they're dynamic, and it's easy to have a 5-minute conversation. What are you guys doing? Oh, we're doing these passion projects, and they have to go online and do research, and then we're presenting it this week. I have a couple teachers I work with who rely strongly on Google Classrooms, which makes it amazing because I'm only here for half of the day. So it just kind of takes away those opportunities to have a chat in the hallway or have a chat at lunchtime or at the end of the day. What are you guys doing next? What's coming? Because we can do a lot of it online, and I can see online the rubrics and the assignments and the things that the ESL students might need support with. But having said that, I still only see these kids maybe 3-4 times a week, maybe 30-40 minutes. So the onus is still on the classroom teacher, and I can do things like run a literature circle, but then a lot of the work needs to be done without me. And so collaboration is huge, but it's also hard. And a lot of ESL positions I think are being eliminated. My other school, the ESL students are served by an itinerant teacher who comes to the school once a week for half a day. And that school has at least as many ESL students as this school does. And so the maximum those kids are going to get is maybe 30 minutes a week. and then she broke her leg and there was no replacement. So then they got nothing for 3 months. So the challenges, again, are just time and scheduling. And I can see that it could easily fall apart if you're not working with classroom teachers who are sort of organized and communicate well with you and can give you that elevator talk, or whatever it's called, elevator pitch of whatever the next unit is that they're working on, so you know, okay, I gotta pull this vocab, and we'll expose them to these science words before the unit starts, and then help them out. And like Leanne said, most of the time it's just you, the classroom teacher, and I can come in and sort of do whatever I can, but it's not that much. Even though I have the whole half a day every day, they could of course use more. It would be nice to be able to go into classrooms more often and be a part of the learning activity as it's happening. But instead it's a bit artificial because you're removing them to go over things.
Can you give me a sense of the number of ELLs in the classrooms that you're supporting a half day a week?
My biggest group has 6 students, and my smallest group has 3. And so overall at this school, I'm seeing about, I think it's something like 20 kids are on my ELL list. So I'm trying to fit 20 kids, and they're in 1, 2, 3, 4 or 5 different classes. So scheduling that even has been a challenge.
And what steps are those children on? Are they on all different steps?
Yeah, it's a wide range. There are some kids who, especially orally, they're on step 6, and they just come if they have a question. And a lot of the time I don't see them because they don't need support. But then there are other kids, like I said, who arrived a couple weeks ago, and are very new to English, and so they're working on. There's a grade 2 student who came from Russia, and she's working on still kindergarten level activities, learning the letters of the alphabet and what sounds they make, and things like that. So it's hard. I think it's really hard for the classroom teacher to find activities that are fulfilling for her, while still letting her be a part of the class, because she just doesn't yet have the skills to do what the rest of the class is doing.
Thank you.